thinking about other episodes of Black Mirror. A lot of them now don't seem so far fetched anymore. None of them seem like, if you
Mm.
rewatch the old episodes of Black Mirror now, you're thinking, oh yeah, that's what's going to be
That's like
happening.
closer than it used to be, or is
Yeah,
already
that's
happening. Yeah.
that's 99% sure now that this is where we're headed. Like you're like, yeah, this is not even a twist anymore. This doesn't even feel uncomfortable. This is where we are now.
Well,
You
yeah,
know,
that's
we're
a worry
almost
when,
there.
what we found is uncomfortable 10 years ago is actually now sort of comfortable.
That's exactly what I was trying to say. That things that felt uncomfortable 10 years ago, or they felt like a plot twist with technology, are effectively a given in 2025 now. We are running towards them, and we're all okay with
Mm.
it.
Well, yeah, I guess we're sort of okay with it, but we sort of aren't, because I think if you ask a general person, they're probably a bit wary of all this stuff. But whether they actually change their habits in response to it, um, it remains to be seen. I guess it's like the recycling debate, like whether like enough people will care enough to actually do it. In the case of recycling, that's at
Mm,
least at least for like the last 20 years, a lot of people mobilized and acted. But
mm,
generally, most people, yeah, it's hard to know what makes the majority actually act and change their behavior in a way which inconveniences them, or in the case of Black Mirror, will mean they
mm.
won't necessarily go along with all the technological innovations, because they have a principled stance against it.
I think you mentioned recycling. I think the more people become exposed to these topics from mainstream sources, like trustworthy people, people in like positions of power, or people who are famous, or just even the mainstream media, the more people become aware and come on board, really, I think. And I think a big change has come from people like Elon Musk, as we were saying earlier, who has been showing us actively the benefits of the technologies he's creating. We're seeing Optimus. I don't know if you heard the other day, they Tesla opened that new charging station in LA that is also like a burger place. I thought that was so cool, and they had one of the Optimus robots serving popcorn at the front. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh yeah, I did see that. Yeah, but yeah,
I
like this
thought
sort of
that's so cool.
romanticization of the space age, which
Yeah,
is
exactly.
actually a missing message we're really not getting. And like, I mean, and you would think that we would have got it because like 40 years ago, everyone was really all about sci-fi, and like a lot of people had a fascination with the space race and like just the sort of like sci-fi world, and films were full of it and everything. And I guess the films are still full of it, but maybe the general populace has got a bit more wary generally of this dystopian, potentially dystopian world we're running towards, and it's lost its romanticization. So even the space race, which in
Hmm.
the 60s, like
United everyone.
most people were on board with, and like it was just fascinating for people, and JFK, a lot of people liked him because of that. Whereas today, a lot of people leading the space race are characters which a lot of people don't like. So Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, I guess Richard Branson to a lesser extent, but obviously Elon Musk has some big fans and some
Hmm.
not so, and a lot of people don't like
Haters.
him. But yeah, that makes a lot of people, if you are not a fan of Elon Musk, very
Hmm.
switched off to the romanticization of this like really cool future, which as a child you might have had this fascination, this sort of like other
Hmm.
world, which is a potential for us to live. Um, and that's not to say it doesn't come without any pitfalls, and maybe romanticization is not a good thing, but it's interesting the lack of romanticization.
Hmm.
And I think, yeah, people like Elon Musk have played a role in inspiring people to see it this
Hmm.
way, but also uninspiring people who don't like him, because by association, they associate him with maybe leading the charge on this radical fast
Dark age.
innovation, which might, yeah, which might just lead to the enrichment of billionaires rather than uh, other people's lives actually changing in a meaningful way.
The problem I see, though, and I don't know if you see it as well, with the whole, space race and the rise of the space age, is that I think when this was happening back then, when back in the day when there was like the race to the moon, I think people weren't. I don't know. Maybe I don't know if people were as worried about the state of affairs here as much as they are now. I think whenever I see
It was a Cold
rockets
War.
being, it was, yes, admittedly, but I will say as well that it, it was the Cold War, but at the same time, people were still able to kind of afford a standard of living that people
Right.
feel like they're not able to afford anymore. Let's put it that way. And I see
Hmm.
a lot of times in videos of rockets being launched, people are like, why are you wasting so much money, so many billions to rockets that are going to space when we are having so many issues now here at the moment? And and I'm not saying that this is and I'm not saying that this is the way to look at things. It's almost like, yes, there can be, why can there only be money for one cause, you know? Why can there only be money for rockets or only be money for, medicines and stuff? It doesn't work that way necessarily. It doesn't
Yeah, I
mean
think
that
that is
because
a
we're
very
putting money in
simplistic.
rockets.
It is a
Yeah.
simplistic view, and obviously it has some credence. Like you could, Elon Musk could redirect the money towards another endeavor. But yeah, I think it. Not that I'm an economist, but I feel
Hmm.
if I went into it, probably you would realize that, but it's not so simple as that, and that the sort of pushing forwards is perhaps the best way to cater for the people who are not doing so well, and that's obviously controversial. But if you look
Mm.
at how development has happened over the last at least 100, 200 years, then it is because of countries such as the UK and the USA
Mm.
becoming so innovative that has leveled up effectively the whole world in many ways. It hasn't for a lot of people, obviously, but if you would look at it from a perspective of 100, 200 years ago, you would have never bet that this sort of level of innovation would have happened. And although there is a disparity between rich and poor, which perhaps is greater than ever before, the poor generally are less poor and they have access to more technologies and safety nets from the state, at least in the UK,
Mm.
and that's it's a bonus. And I think Steven
Mm.
Pinker, the I think relatively left wing researcher Steven Pinker, he wrote that about a book about this a few years ago, saying that actually we look at things very negatively, but actually there is no better time to live than right now.
Mm.
Obviously, happiness wise is another question, but that's a case of our own gratitude and what we choose to spend our time doing and not doing. But
Mm.
but in terms of the resources we've got and the opportunities we've got, then there is no better time to live. And
Mm.
it'd be hard to convince me otherwise on that.
It would be hard to convince me as well. Any other time, I think I would have been dead from a common cold without antibiotics already, to be honest. There's
Yeah,
many
that's the
times
problem
that I've
though.
taken
We just take that for granted.
yeah, I
We
would have there's been so many times I've taken antibiotics for something, and I wouldn't be here if I didn't have them, So, and I
mm,
think people take these things for granted, as you say. And also I think people take, like, very easily disregard the fact that all these large corporations are actually built by people, engineers, scientists who work and 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 produce things and advance our science and technology. This It's not like just done by one person. Whole industries, whole communities have been elevated because of, and whole
yeah,
areas.
and people are angry that the person at the top gets the most money, the biggest paycheck. But that's just how companies work because it's a competition, and a lot of companies seem to have worked out that by paying the top guys more, and they are
Yeah,
often guys, you end up outcompeting yourself if you didn't pay
yeah.
them more. So you
It,
outcompete other companies. Like
it's almost the
all,
same. Yeah,
all of this is
go.
like mathematical and like predictable, and I'm sure they've done the economic tests, and they wouldn't pay their CEO so much if they knew
Mm,
that it wasn't worth it. And it might not seem directly worth it because it is obviously you're paying them a lot of money, and that's money out of the company. But capitalism is a system which doesn't lie, or at least largely it doesn't lie, because the companies that survive are the ones which have the best results. So it's a results driven system. So you can get the data interpretation wrong, but the results of doing that are often fatal for your company, and so you won't be around
Mm.
very much longer.
Yeah, and this is the same argument where people see, charities, for example, where charities often pay their top CEOs millions of pounds,
Mm,
and
yeah.
people are like, "Oh, we're giving money to this charity, and the money goes to the CEO." But the CEO helps the company grow and brings in, and helps the company get more reach, get more donations, get more influence, which in turn will result to the company being better and actually helping more people. So it's how the
The only
system
problem is
works.
when it puts off people donating because they can maintain the narrative for themselves, and perhaps rightly, that oh, a lot of the money that I donate is actually not going to the cause that I thought I was donating towards, which I think is why, although it was perhaps necessary to pay CEOs in some cases for charities huge amounts of money, um, it is perhaps one of the best things that innovators can do is work out a way that in the modern world now with the technologies we've got, whether we could find a way which didn't involve that. And so the excuse for people to say, oh, I'm not going to donate to charity because only 10% of it actually goes to the thing I care about, that excuse goes away. I think that would be super powerful if some charities could change to that way of being. And then
Hmm.
as a result, because they get more donations, maybe outcompete the old school charities.
Maybe if that was an option, but it's not just I. People oversimplify it. A charity's job isn't just taking money from A to B. There's a lot of ways that charities work, and I think that might be oversimplifying how charities work. It's not just that they take the money from you and they take it to someone that needs it. Often the money has to change a lot of different hands and be distributed to various other smaller organizations to become, support that isn't necessarily financial support for different causes. It can be support in terms of equipment. It can be support in terms of research grants. It can be support in terms of getting more staff where research is done. It's not that simple. That's all I'm trying to say. That it's not just taking money from A to B. Otherwise, we wouldn't need such large charities in the first place that are so
Yeah.
complex.
Yeah, just thinking out loud, is like, would you think that there is ever a charity that could be created for whatever cause that is as simple as money being transferred? Um,
I,
like,
I
even
think I can see what you're saying, but if you think about it, there is a lot of the problems that the world is facing aren't and a lot of charities are working on aren't just problems that you can just throw money at them. Like it's not just about like the problem of homelessness, let's take for example, isn't just a money issue. It's not just that the people on the street need just simple money. Because if you
mm,
just the people are homeless for a variety of reasons, and it's not, and I'm not going to pretend that I know all of the reasons, but sometimes they can be reasons of addiction, sometimes they can be reasons of abuse, sometimes they can be financial reasons, sometimes they can be community reasons. Or some of them can be addressed with money, but not all of them could be addressed with money. It's not about just giving someone who's addicted money that will take them off the street. They'll just use it for their addiction in that case.
mm.
So it's not just a charity taking the money from you and giving it to them. Just as an example.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to continue playing out loud.
Go on.
So with Optimus robots, Elon Musk thinking that they're going to be the biggest product of that Tesla has ever produced. Imagine like everyone in developed countries in 10 years has like an Optimus robot if they want one. Well, then you could have one charity which all it does is buy Optimus robots for people in who can't afford it themselves in other countries. And so that is almost as simple as just money transferring hands. And so you could have a charity without any people perhaps in that scenario. And
Mm.
then you can have Optimus robots maybe running the charity if that's needed, but also implementing in the most clever way the maximum benefit for money ratio in terms of implementing things on the ground in a way which helps people. Um, and so, yeah, so you maybe have one charity which just buys robots for people, and then the other
Hmm.
charities which then can get those robots to do things for those people, like build wells in an efficient way.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I cannot argue against optimization and robots taking
Well, yeah,
taking
we
jobs.
talk about
We
robots taking jobs in companies, but we never talk about it in charities. Like,
no, no,
surely,
that is
to an extent, this is likely to happen, and I would say could be a good thing in terms of like obviously it costs a lot of money to afford the robots, but once the robots have been bought, then you have it's like solar panels, and the companies which use robots will outcompete the I should say
Mm.
charities which don't use robots.
I mean, yeah, I mean, as you said, I don't see why jobs being lost in other sectors, not jobs being lost in other sectors, more like AI and robots taking jobs en masse everywhere else will leave charities untouched. I'm sure, especially big organizations would benefit from robots being involved, and maybe, as you said, maybe they will find more ways to more efficiently help people and more efficiently deal with issues that are multifactory issues, let's say in that way,
Mm,
such as issues of world hunger, homelessness, and war and famine.
mm.
So I think even our wildest dreams um, will be hard to predict what how AI will change our way of life.
Yeah, yeah, I think yeah, innovation will outstrip the pace of what we can dream for sure. Because
Yeah,
if you think of innovation as happening at a hockey stick growth rate, but
yeah.
it just becomes quicker and quicker. You don't need a smart home when you just got an Optimus robot.
Exactly. But when you just have a robotic slave to do everything for you.
Yeah, you can have an old home with like you don't need Alexa lamps or whatever. You just need a robot to go and turn them on for you.
Yeah, exactly. That'll be fun. But I love innovation, to be honest, and I love all that comes out of innovation. But the problem I see these days, and I watched an interesting video the other day that was saying about how in our um, in our strive to improve our lives, which is obviously a good cause, we are effectively trying to optimize everything in the altar of efficiency, effectively. So, and that is happening in all of our aspects of life. So we're doing everything to maximize efficiency and optimize everything. So, and where I see it most with my own life, apart from
Mm,
obviously my job and the way we live in, I see it in video games. If I can give an example, where when I used to play video games in the past, I would just the video game would come out, I would get the game, start playing it. Maybe I would kind of in the back of the games back in the day there was like a short kind of description. Like I'm
mm,
showing my age back with like PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 games where you'd look at the back of the game and there was like a nice short description of what the game was and it would have a couple of photos and that was it. Like that's all you had to go by. Like how the game looked, how the game would feel, all of that. And then you just
mm,
play the game, and it would be all a discovery. It would be all new to you. It'd be all amazing. Now there is the advertising before the game comes out. There's advertising like as the game comes out. There is people that stream the game. There's people that make video clips of the game. There is people who discuss the game and they make walkthroughs of the game. Don't get me wrong, back in the day, people would make walkthroughs of the game as well, but that would take time. You'd have to go on specific blogs to find it. You'd have to get special magazines. Sometimes there was the PlayStation magazine back then that also
mm,
used to have some walkthroughs, and it wasn't as readily accessible. So as an average consumer, you wouldn't be exposed to all this kind of wave of stuff coming at you. So now I kind of I'm so, and it's obviously my choice as well, because I could say I could shut down everything and not watch anything. But as soon as I see an interesting new game, I want to know more about it, and then I'm thinking that if I don't look into it, maybe I'll miss out things that I was meant to find and stuff like that. So in the fear of missing out,
Mm.
I'm effectively optimizing and kind of like making my experience completely linear instead of all the potential branches that my experience could have had. And I feel like we're doing that with all of our aspects of our life, slowly but surely. We're effectively optimizing and narrowing down to one path that is like the correct path.
Mm. Yeah.
And and I don't know if you felt at all something like that in your life, or kind of at all.
Mm. Um. Yeah, I don't game, at least I haven't for several years. So, and not in that regard, but yeah, I think there is a general worry of because there is so much content to consume or whatever, or but we prioritize quantity over quality, and we optimize our lives to try and get as much quantity in as possible. The problem with quantity is it never really fulfills us because it can't, because it's not like a flow experience.
Mm,
So if you generally input it, like in terms of content or whatever, videos or whatever, that doesn't fulfill us on a flow level in terms of a flow experience, and so it's very tempting though to continue doing all that and try and distract ourselves. Um, but those things feel like they fulfill you, but they're like junk food. They don't actually fill you up. They don't fill the right hole. And so yeah, I think that's the biggest worry of the modern world that we're going into, and we already are in, is the prioritization of quantity over quality, and how we can, if we want, distract ourselves forever. And that means maybe we don't go into extreme depressions, and maybe that's good. But it also means that we're very superficial. We don't really go into the depths, as it were, and really find out what we're running from, why we're trying to distract ourselves all the time. And I was reading a book
mm,
by Peter Kingsley called "In the Dark Places of Wisdom," about this
mm,
ancient Greek philosopher Parmenides, who is largely forgotten, other than like Plato does a dialogue about him. But yeah, it's and his whole thing, and Peter Kingsley's, I guess, message behind the book maps onto modern society, although he doesn't say it directly, in terms of, yeah, like we're distracting ourselves,
mm,
and that's only becoming worse. And
mm,
really, we have to ask, why are we distracting ourselves from? He calls it like the spiritual emptiness within us, which is has to be acknowledged before you can actually start getting some sort of real fulfillment. So you have to almost acknowledge that sort of emptiness, or even depression, if it maps on that way. And it's not so much the depression which is bad, but we're running away from it. Which
mm,
in the modern world, we could do that forever. You could literally spend your whole life running away from it.
mm. Yeah, yeah, and going back to what I was saying in terms of like the efficiency and optimization, I feel like the innovation is happening still, but I'm afraid that it will not keep happening. That's my fear. Because effectively, we're all choosing on every aspect of our lives to follow a meta, whether it is when people start a new business these days, you need to do X, Y, and Z. If you're having a new idea that you want to try, you need to try X, Y, and Z. And if you don't do that established progression in things that already people have done before, it's almost guaranteed you'll succeed, because we're almost building the systems and the algorithms to follow a specific trend each time, whether it is for games, whether it is for technology, whether it is for a new idea that someone might have. And then we're losing, like, probably or maybe, um, things that could work because no one is trying them. It's just, maybe it's stifling our kind of options and creativity in some way.
Yeah, well, I think true innovation generally only happens when we're not scared, um,
Mm.
and you're only really not scared when you are in a state of you're not in a state of running towards something else in a rush, as it were. So as long
Mm.
with a distraction mindset, as a lot of people will find that they're rushing towards something and they feel there's not enough time and that they need to do it a certain way or whatever. Whereas, or if they don't get rich by a certain point, then there's no point. And so, yeah, like true innovators will put creativity above everything else, except maybe the source of their creativity. And yeah, that means that people can be free to try new things and see what works. But obviously, sometimes those creative types are not very good at actually running businesses, and so that's the dilemma between having people who are good at flow experiences slash creativity, and then people who are good leaders,
Mm.
which are much more structured. But yeah, obviously you can have someone take over the roles of CEO once you made enough money, but even in the early stages of a business, often you need someone who's got that structure as well as able to lead.
Mm. Yeah, this is people always say that when, especially when people are trying to set up a business or kind of build something from scratch on their own, they say you need to either do it with family or to have friends that are like family, that you can effectively divide and conquer the load effectively to make things
Mm.
um running smoother, because as you said, usually people who are good at one aspect of things might not be as good in leading and vice versa. So I do think that people who have that option usually become much more successful than people who try and go about it solo.
Yeah, it's obviously very tempting to do things solo, and you can sort of think, oh, um, I'm so much better doing everything than all my friends are, so why should I help or ask for help? But actually, that doesn't necessarily work like that. And the big worry, I guess, maybe for innovation going forward is, but a lot of people in a lot of businesses are started by people knowing each other and working together with their friends or family or whatever. But a lot of with more online relationships where you don't see the other people as often or maybe really make the same connection with them or able to really work on the same project as them. Like if you're meeting your business partners online,
Mm.
but I think it's much harder to actually get stuff off the ground and actually inspire other people, if you're the leader of a team or if you're just one inspirer and the other team members inspire you back. That's a lot harder to do when you're just conversing via email or even
Mm.
video or even via video call. So although you could theoretically have more people to choose from if you go online and try and find the perfect people to work on your project, that's I think it would be interesting to if there is any studies on that, and I guess it will be easier to find out in the next 10 years of whether businesses are still being successful based on if they're started with people they know in person rather than people
Mm.
they've only met online.
Do you think something is maybe lost through virtual contact that we cannot replicate by conversing through Teams and Zoom and other kind of like
Mm, well,
productivity, like
yeah, I'm not like
softwares
one of these
even?
people who puts down on Teams and Zooms. Like obviously, that I think that's not quite as good as in person, but just if you're with someone and if you're really passionate about a business or an idea, then if you're with them most of the day, then you could really the sky's the limit of what you could achieve because you're really working with them and rubbing off them and bouncing off them. Whereas,
Mm.
yeah, online it's harder to get a hold of people.
Mm.
People sometimes
Mm.
reply immediately to your emails, and then sometimes they take a week to. And so, and yeah, so and then you have to arrange Zoom calls and whatever to if you to actually have some sort of in person. um,
Hmm.
interaction, which Zoom kind of provides, but you have to arrange it, and so it's not as organic, and you don't get it as often, and so rubbing off each other is difficult.
Maybe then, with once we both have a brain chip, then I'll be able to instantly call you and have a meeting through a virtual meeting through the brain chips.
But you can just do that by phone, can't you, if you want to? Like I mean, it's not
What
like
if
this
it?
technology is a new thing in that regard.
What if it felt like we were both, you know, kind of how Neo was uploaded in his training and he was like fighting Morpheus and they were both like in the same room and stuff? Maybe
Mm.
this is the next, you know, iteration of the next stage of brain chips and we can be in the same room even if you were like in the UK and I was like in in the Arctic or something, you know?
Mm.
Like what if that is the case? And then you have
Yeah,
this
well,
kind of
I still
almost
think for most people, you're going to still have the problem of arranging times and the fact that you're arranging times because most people won't want to just be called like out of the blue or so. Most
but
in the large, you're
mm,
going to have to arrange time still, and that's not much better than being on the phone. If you can see someone and it looks like they're actually there, really is that much better than FaceTime? I think the difference is it's cool. It's cool if they look like they're actually there, but I don't think it really makes that much difference.
interesting. I'm surprised by that response. Actually, I thought you'd be all about, you know, completely virtual, chip powered, microchip powered connections.
Not particularly.
Uh,
No.
interesting, interesting. Because I don't see. I think the using the microchips could result to something like that in the future. One of these brain chips in our brains, leading us to live in a world like the Matrix. So,
Yeah, well, that would probably also be a lot of people's resistance to them, especially if AI slash robotics takes a lot of people's need to work away. Then if you sort of actually don't need to adopt all this extra technology, and you actually might be resistant against it because it's taking your job. So we might get a revival of a Luddite movement, which we had in Victorian
mm,
times, where the factory workers would smash the machines up. Who knows?
mm, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. This week, I heard a new study where they gave microdoses of LSD in a dog who had severe anxiety issues,
Hmm.
and they made a study around that. Well, obviously, very small sample size. That one dog, from my
Yeah, but
understanding.
yeah, that's a very small sample size.
Um, but it was like an older dog. I think it was like 12, 13 years old, but with severe anxiety issues. As soon as the owner like left the room, the dog would be extremely like upset, barking, running around, exhibiting signs of extreme anxiety. And they microdosed it with like very small amounts of LSD. And according to their findings, the mental health of the dog was completely improved, where the dog effectively displayed no signs, neither of the influence of LSD nor of anxiety at the same time.
Mm.
So, and they were hoping that this would allow them to increase the scientific research in this area as well of LSD being used in microdoses for treatment potentially of mental health conditions.
Mm.
So I thought that was a very interesting kind of new development.
Yeah, and
Um,
obviously that sounds like a positive, but you could make the argument: is it a bit like the Soma in Brave New World, where the Soma is given to the well, most people take the in this idealized society, this supposed utopia, people take
mm,
Soma when things start stressing them out too much, and then it basically just sedates you in terms of you're not able to think for yourself or you because you don't want to, and so yeah, like is it a bit weird that everyone giving their dogs LSD? Like maybe not, maybe it doesn't really have. I would think maybe if you took if you assumed that the same effect on dogs would be the effect on dogs would be similar to what's on humans, then it wouldn't sedate you. It would, and it wouldn't like change you to think a certain in a certain way, it would probably just allow you to be a bit more freed up in terms of
Hmm.
it would liberate your thinking a bit more. So that to give the other side of the argument, that could be good.
Yeah, I think with all of these substances, the prohibition of all of them created so much barrier for research and like
Yeah,
studying
yeah, it
and
would be amazing
stigma.
to know what I think the world would be in some ways radically different if we didn't put that ban on it 50 years ago or however long ago it was
Precisely.
in the end of the
That
60s.
that's where I'm coming from. Where I'm thinking there's so much we don't know, and there is so much knowledge to be gained, not just from like studying how much they can benefit us, how much we can unlock about the brain and how the brain works and how the brain kind of changes its function when it's on these substances. So there is so much that we can learn for the human brain itself that we are not able to learn through the existing, drugs
Mm.
and therapeutics and other studies that we have.
Yeah,
So
and
in
in
my
one,
yeah.
you could make the argument that like people say, oh, there's more to left to explore in the oceans than there is, or we know more about the sky, the space rather than the oceans, and but
Mm,
actually about the human brain we know very little. And in terms of consciousness, I think
exactly.
like it's not even certain it is a materialist, um, like the materialist mindset of it coming out of just atoms rolling over each other. That's not clear at all. Even a lot of scientists will admit that that's not. It's not
Mm,
obvious. It's not proved that that's the case.
exactly. In the way that these substances modify the conscious experience can tell us so much more about the human brain, but we don't have that many studies. All in all, like in more recent years of different doses, situations, groups, age groups, different people. I know there has been studies done with um, like terminal cancer patients in some cases where they kind of were able to um, relieve the fear of death, and some other studies, but they're quite small and there aren't that many. So there's so much that we don't know, as you said, about the human brain. And I think any kind of research of this sort could help us both understand the human brain and also treat afflictions
Mm, yeah,
of the brain. So I'm all for it. All I like hearing all of this kind of any kind of study like that.
it is very fascinating. It's we're lucky to be alive and be able to yeah be graced with all these new arrivals in terms of new breakthroughs and whatever. I did hear about the m- microdosing might not be a good idea in terms of if you're taking the substance. A lot of it commonly used
Oh,
microdosing substances that can cause potentially heart issues. But the trouble is that was one study, and I'm not sure
hmm.
how comprehensive it was. And so, as you say again, it's something you really need multiple studies.
Exactly. You
The
you you need
more the better.
yeah you need for this kind of things you need a huge amount of you know initial studies, and then you need meta studies where they do meta analysis of all of these studies and create even more comprehensive results and data about more concrete conclusions. And we
Yeah,
don't even have all these things.
yeah.
And
Like a very common say, like you'll often talk to people, and if a subject of MDMA comes up, they'll say a common like is a bit of advice, I guess, but it's got into a lot of people's minds is that oh, MDMA might be not too bad if it's pure, but it will you shouldn't take it say more than every 6 months because it will like dampen your dopamine receptors or serotonin receptors. Um, and I think there is maybe a few studies which sort of suggest that, but the evidence is much less thin than a lot of people make out when they proclaim that. And I think a lot of people's knowledge on drugs is very sketchy, maybe because we don't talk about it very much, but also because there's not really the quality of studies and enough studies out there to, and so it's actually very hard for you as an individual to go and research it and
mm,
to come away with a really educated opinion if you're really being sincere about it. So yeah, I guess more studies would be the best solution to that.
Mm, yeah, I definitely think the more the stigma goes and the more the attitudes change towards investigating and researching all of these psychotropic substances, you know, the more it will benefit people at the end,
Well,
I think.
you could say that, and I guess to an extent I'm on board with that. But to play devil's advocate, you could say this is just another form of distraction, and so you might say, like, oh, you got all these people on social media, all these people consuming content, like that's a distraction. And you could
Mm,
also say that this is another form of distraction. And like Alan Watson, people would talk about even religion itself being almost the ultimate form of distraction if it's approached in the wrong way, because it's basically always pushing up in terms of trying to reach a state of transcendence, which we hope is true, but often we don't see material in our lives, or at least not for a very long time. And Peter Kingsley's point is, and Carl Jung as well, has a famous quote, I forget exactly what it was, but there is the light is only found in the dark, in terms of you have to come back to being happy with your inner being, to just be content with what is. And that's basically what meditation largely is, in its truest form. It's just sitting in acceptance with what is, and then only then you can, yeah, become maybe a bit more fulfilled, because you're not always chasing over after everything, and you come back to your true being, which, as a lot of mystical traditions talk about, is the only source of true happiness. And
no, I
just
agree.
psychedelics, people would say, oh, people should take psychedelics to try and get to that state of realization. And yeah, maybe that is true. It's just as, like, some people might say, oh, you should consume lots of content on philosophy, and that will help you become more spiritually advanced. But really, the only true learning ultimately has to happen with yourself, and that's what, like, all these mystics and this book Peter Kingsley wrote is, again, emphasizes, is that all these things are quite nice, but they become addictions if we think we're getting closer to truth, but actually they're distracting us from true learning, which is really just learning to stay undistracted, not chasing other things, and stay with the feeling of emptiness within, that longing, which we ultimately know that food or whatever does not satisfy us for maybe more than 10 minutes. And as Alan Watts would talk about, it's, if we eat lots of food, not to say you shouldn't really enjoy food, he did, but if you eat it with the idea that it's going to take away that feeling of emptiness and longing for something more than food, then that's a delusion, and perhaps the ultimate delusion.
Mm. No, of course, the way when you describe it in that sense of psychedelics becoming just another distraction for people to chase after and chase after a high of some kind, then you're back where you were. You know, you're replacing the doom scrolling with magic mushroom trips, effectively,
Yeah.
while you're completely
Although
numb and.
they do say it's anti-addictive, and I think that is true to some extent, but maybe less so with MDMA, which is perhaps the danger of it, is because it is less anti-addictive, I would say, in terms
Mm,
of, because it doesn't have these grand visions that higher doses of traditional psychedelics would have, but it has the feeling of sort of amazing love and peace. Then that, people do get quite addicted to that. Like, someone I know, her daughter's quite addicted to MDMA,
really.
and she's 14. Uh, and yeah, she took a laced MDMA pill, and often, like, a lot of people either are really against MDMA or not or they're taking it. And so people against it will be like, "Oh, MDMA is really bad," but actually, often it's the problem is because it's illegal, it's laced with a lot of much more
Mm,
harmful drugs. And yeah, I think MDMA is perhaps problematic for corroding or whatever the serotonin receptors, but the risk to life is when it's laced with other drugs.
of course, yeah. Of course. And that's, as you said, this is the risk of 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 consuming, as you said, illegal substances, is that you don't know where they've come from. They're unregulated, they're not tested, they're not quality controlled, they're not quality assured, none of that.
And it also means,
Where
yeah, like 18-year-olds are more likely to be able to get it because it gives a business, a viable business to drug dealers, um, because they've got a big audience. Whereas
well,
if it became legalized, at least in the medical arena, then you could perhaps make it a little bit more controlled in terms of you take away a lot of the business, perhaps of
mm,
drug dealers, and
yeah, I
and
mean,
and therapy would mean that only that not under 18s perhaps wouldn't be able to access it. And so, although they could maybe go on the black market, it wouldn't be as easy because all the older kids who would teach them that wouldn't be doing it themselves. And so, gradually over time, it would be under 18s would become more and more ignorant of how to actually source these drugs, and also the drug dealers would become less uh, populous
empowered. Yeah.
and populous and empowered because they've lost a lot of their business to the clinics.
I mean, I'll say it again. Prohibition does not work. We've seen it. We have a very recent example here in the UK, the Online Safety Act that was just passed recently to save the
Mm.
children, stop children from accessing illegal um, content while they're underage.
Well, yeah. So, is this like specifically pornographic material, or is it broader than that?
No, it's broader than that. It's any material that is considered uh, unsuitable for, like, people haven't been even been able to access X and Twitter and just normal videos of like videos. I wouldn't say normal videos. I would just say videos of police brutality, for example. They would be blanked
Right.
on Twitter and so on and so forth. That's not just that. Any kind of, this is effectively a censorship um,
Mm.
law that does anything but protect the children effectively, because children knew that VPNs existed when I was a child, when it was even harder to get a VPN.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a VPN can circumvent effectively all these measures. So it's like,
Yeah. I guess in a way, it's the problem with old people making policies because, in a way, like on its fundamentals, I might be inclined to agree with it, but yeah, if it is just so easy to get around it, then yeah, is it worth
and all it
doing? I
does
guess
is
you could say why don't the government clamp down on VPNs? But then that's quite
only,
totalitarian.
yeah, or not even, the most totalitarian countries in the world have banned VPNs. I think only like North Korea bans VPNs. Like
Mm,
I think even China doesn't ban VPNs. I think I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. But I think only the complete totalitarian regimes ban VPNs.
yeah,
And it's not that VPNs are just used to circumvent the laws, but they're actually used by a lot of businesses and institutions for security and protection. Like, this is not just like something that is used for illegal activity. A VPN isn't inherently illegal. A VPN is a tool for internet
mm,
protection
yeah.
that big institutions and companies and people use in everyday lives. I use it.
I
It's
guess it's
like,
like a knife. Like people use it for good reasons and not so good
yeah,
reasons, and you can't really ban it.
exactly. Like, you can't do it. Um, but yeah, it just feels like a very totalitarian approach to saving the children.
Yeah.
Um,
Although, yeah, obviously, like some of the causes I care most about are anti-totalitarianism, but also the the protection of children. So it is perhaps the epitome of that issue
Are you conflicted? Yeah.
of conflict of terms of, yeah, like I think it is incredibly important that, and I think what children are subjected to at the moment and is terrible. Like in terms of being able to access drugs easily, being able to access pornographic material easily, being
Mm.
able to, yeah, spending most of their days on social media, consuming content which maybe in some ways brainwashes them, or at least means that they're not spending time doing
Oh,
things which are
I yeah.
fulfilling.
I am completely on board with like what Australia did the other day, where they banned under 16s from social media and everything.
Mm. Yeah, it'd
So
be interesting to see the success of that and
yeah.
whether that was implementable. Because yeah, I would be on board with that, and I think a lot of people would be actually in this country. Because you like 10, 20 years ago, you would make the argument, oh, kids need to be on social media, they need to be online because that's what all the jobs will be in 20 years, or when they become adults. And if they haven't been with technology, then they will be left behind. But I think that argument gains less and less credence in a world where actually AI can do a lot of the more robotic jobs, and also unlike 50 years ago when you might be helpful to have learned how your car engine works. Now it's almost pointless to learn how that works because um, it's it just drives you, the car just drives you wherever you go, and like same with AI, is just it's very intuitive. It's
Mm.
you just turn the steering wheel, as it were, or you just ask it a question and it will respond. So you don't. I would expect, on general, old people are finding technology easier to get to grips with now than they were 10 years ago because it's just become more intuitive.
No, and I agree. I don't think anyone would argue that social, after seeing all the negatives of social media, that they are a net positive for children. So,
Mm.
but then at the same time, I don't think making every adult, profiling every adult in the country into third party databases in order to access the internet is the way forward as well.
So third-party databases. Can you
Yeah.
explain a bit more about that?
Well, in most cases, the AIDS verification has been outsourced into third-party websites than the ones that are the owners of the website you're trying to access.
Yeah.
In many cases, so you have to effectively surrender your face and driver's license to a third-party provider that could, at any point, lose or sell your data to someone else, and so on
Mm.
and so forth. So I think that's the main issue that most people have with this current approach. If it was, I think maybe people would be more open to it if it was a more centralized government um, verification system that would effectively be the same as your driver's license and the same token, your
Mm.
same digital driver's license that's stored by the government would allow you to access anything that is only allowed for adults, or um, or some sort of similar kind of measure, rather than you being effectively at the mercy of a third party, unregulated company outside the UK, by the way, in many cases.
Mm. Yeah, that does sound like a recipe for disaster in terms of,
Exactly.
like, it does seem like that probably will go wrong at some stage to a lesser or greater degree. Yeah, I guess I don't know if I want to make the argument, but I guess someone might make the argument as, but it's not like everyone's um, data is going to this third party. It's only if you want to access criminal activities. What would you say to that?
It's not just criminal activities, it's just even accessing Twitter. You're
Well,
just accessing
I can access Twitter still. So why? And
not every.
I assume the government doesn't know my age. So um, so
No,
what's the
but
problem?
I can tell you the problem. It depends what you're accessing on Twitter. For example, you might not be accessing all the pages you've accessed on Twitter. Might have been pages where there was no content that was marked inappropriate for
Mm.
minors in this case.
But maybe you could make the argument that's it may be better for adults as well not to be exposed to all this and more gruesome content.
That's a slippery slope argument because so would you not want to know, for example, if the police officers in your hometown are beating someone up underneath your house, for example, and that person was innocent, like kind of how they do in the US, for example, very regularly, you know,
Right. Yeah, no,
or something
I
similar.
sort of expected that argument to come.
Who defines what you should watch and what you shouldn't watch? You know, what is appropriate for you as an adult and what's not appropriate for you as an adult. You know, it's a very it's very out there in the air. You know,
Yeah, no, it is a difficult line to draw.
and as far as you've told me before, you think everything being visible to everyone is the best. You know, um,
The best sunlight is the best
disinfectant.
disinfectant.
Exactly,
Yeah,
sunlight is the best disinfectant.
and you could say yeah, like all the pictures of war zones, or the videos that people see are more likely to make people
Oh yeah, exactly. Oh,
change their opinions on war. And I would have thought that was definitely the case unquestionably, and I think it is that it changes people's opinions. But the trouble is, at least for wars we got going on at the moment, it doesn't seem like our opinions really matter, at least in the West. Like, however much pressure we put on the UK government, it's not going to
mm.
mean anything to Israel or Russia.
No, but it
Uh,
would just make you less informed if you're not aware of things.
You'll make
Less
you less
awareness means
informed,
less.
but this obsession to be informed about everything that's going around the whole globe, because out of maybe a sense of responsibility, but really, you know that most people don't really do anything about it, and it just makes people more depressed and more focused on issues they can't solve, whereas and distracted from spending their time doing things in their community, which although frustrating to think that such evil is happening in different places of the world, really all you can do is affect your sphere of influence, as it were, and all this news just distracts you and makes you
Well, we're
less
not
of.
even talking about global news necessarily. Even things that are happening in your own community could be censored unless you're verified as an adult. In this case,
Well, yeah, but they're not censoring. They're censoring maybe videos. It sounds like, but they're not censoring text, and so yeah, like I assume even words like rape would be okay in terms of saying, "Oh, this police officer or whatever did
now,
some
for now,
indecent
maybe
sexual act."
later, yeah, maybe later, someone
But
else
the
will come
slippery
and
side,
decide you shouldn't. Children should
yeah,
not even see the word rape anywhere. Children should not see the word killed anywhere. Then you'll
I
have
think
to
yeah,
verify. Will
slippery
you say
slope
then?
argument is a significant concern. I'm interested in like at the moment is that this actually a bad policy,
It's a
but
hugely bad policy, like so badly thought, and 100% a bad policy. There is no question about this. Like, it's bad policy from so many angles that you pick it. It's just bad. The way
mm,
that it's implemented, the way it's done, the way the third party system is implemented for ID verification, the way all of it. There is
so,
just all of it.
is do you think it's an impossible problem to solve? Like, what would you thinking out loud? Like, what would you do to protect children from um, this, like accessing like pornographic material when they're like 10 or
I
being
think
able
the
to
parents
buy
should have.
drugs?
I think parents should be the responsible people for this kind of for the state or for the things that the children access and do. If you're
Yeah, and
not,
some parents are good at that, and some parents are incompetent, and then some parents just don't
but I
care
don't think
or they don't have
the
time.
state should be a nanny state that should police this kind of thing. I think the parents should have 100% responsibility on what the children does, and if they don't, they should be penalized for it.
That's an interesting argument. You know, like because that in a way you could say that's totalitarianism, but maybe that is the most
Not have
positive
children then,
form. Yeah, that's
if
the
you can
most
look after
positive
them.
form. The most positive form of totalitarianism isn't the government dictating to your children what to do, but it's putting the responsibility on the parents' shoulders. And so the government's only responsibility is to make sure the parents do a decent job. or whether I'm sure that's very controversial in many ways, but you could say that that may be the best option is in terms of a lot of people don't like being told to do what to do by the government, but this is sort of maybe the most minimalist approach because it's
and and
yeah,
and I don't think it's unreasonable these days. There is tools that the parents have. There is devices that don't have social media. There is phones that don't allow social media. There
yeah,
is
and also interesting, yeah, like parental controls
yeah,
with AI could
precisely.
could mean that parents who are technologically less literate than their children, and so children would historically be able to
Circumvent
get
their
around
measures. Yeah.
circumvent their measures. Now with AI, that means it's less possible because they're even cleverer than the children,
Hmm.
which is a little bit worrying. And also, you might make the argument of just suddenly when people become 18, then they're suddenly going to be unleashed into this world that they're not really prepared for. But maybe that you could say they're in a better state
Exactly.
than when
Who?
they're 12 to be
Exactly.
exposed to this. And that for all their friends, if the measures are so successful that no one, by and large, is accessing this stuff until age 18, then all their friends won't be there to encourage them straight away. Like gradually, as people age on to 19, 20, more and more people will slowly be accessing this stuff. But because absolutely like no one is talking about it at the age of 18 and you've developed other interests,
Hmm.
then it perhaps will be on the large part more gradual a discovery process, and that would be a good thing.
I completely agree. Yeah, that would be a much better way forward. Instead, as yeah, otherwise you're going at the problem from a completely wrong angle, which creates you're effectively limiting, you're compromising the liberty and autonomy and privacy of internet users in the name in a noble in the name of a noble maybe cause, but with a lot of room for issues, abuse of the system, and very terrible outcomes to come from
Well,
this.
that's always been people's argument or worry is that it will always seem like a good reason to do bad things. Like we're
Yeah.
saying with terrorists, like I'm sure there's, I don't know the specific examples, but I know there has been privacy incursions by governments based on trying to stop terrorism,
Mm.
and so yeah, totalitarian states almost certainly will take control based on giving good reasons to their populace, and that's yeah,
And that's what I think was attempted
they
here
are
to give
always
us.
good reasons. They're
Yeah.
very good. It's not like you have to lie or have bad intentions as a government to become a totalitarian state. It could be that you just you are scared, and you think this is the best way to protect people in a fast
I
changing
think
world.
yeah, as you said, these kind of governments hijack our want to hijack people's empathy, people's fear, people's willingness to help the children in this case, for example, for
Mm.
a, which is how can anyone argue against saving the children, But
Yeah, it's a problem with oversimplification of debates, and
exactly.
a lot of debates do get oversimplified, and that's the problem in the modern world. We have short attention spans, and the best catchphrase does best,
Mm,
like take back control of Brexit, or if a gay marriage debate, it's oh, it's just about love.
yeah,
It's about,
it
and
wins.
yes,
It
in a
wins
way,
hearts and
those
minds. Yeah,
slogans are quite correct in some ways. It's not like they're completely
but they
wrong.
can be reductive.
Yes, they stop people thinking more.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
seem so
exactly.
obvious,
It kind of
and
shuts down your kind of nuance
yeah,
thinking.
nuance thinking is the best thing ever. Like it's difficult sometimes, but it's so important.
Mm. I agree, and I wish myself sometimes. I try myself as much as I can to not be preconceived and kind of stay in the nuance space, even though it's uncomfortable very often. To kind of stay in
Mm.
that middle thing. Stay okay. Maybe this is good, but maybe it's bad. But maybe it's good, but maybe it's bad. But and kind of go back and forth without going. No, no, it's definitely good. No, no, no. It's
Mm.
definitely bad, and stay on the bad, and that's it. It's hard to stay there, but I try myself. I wish we could
Yeah.
all be in much more. Maybe nothing would happen if we were all in that nuanced space. We never make any decision for anything.
Maybe, although you could say the best governments don't make that many decisions; they just keep things running, and then every so often make an obvious decision,
Yeah.
rather than putting their fingers in less obvious debates. And that might be a better way, on the whole, of governing is the government doing less, and just things staying relatively the same as they are, unless there's a very obvious reason to change things.
Mm, yeah. That would be the best way, really. We'll have to see what happens. I suppose it'll be interesting to see. I'm surprised actually that they haven't backtracked on this new law. To be honest
Well,
with you.
given time, they seem to be like sometimes backtracking on stuff. Like, sometimes they're quite resistant on stuff, the Labour government.
Yeah,
But
they've been very resistant because I know people have signed a petition. About 500,000 people have signed a petition for the law to
that's a
be
lot, yeah.
reconsidered.
But
So
yeah,
we'll
like
see.
for better or worse, like the Labour government, and in a way, it's quite admirable. I have to give it to them. They don't back down as often. Like obviously, they have U-turned on a few things, but like they seem to not care about being unpopular, which
Mm.
at least in my book makes them a little bit more respectable. I
Mm.
probably won't vote for them next election, and I didn't vote for them for the last
And I
election.
think they know
But
that now. That's why they don't care about being unpopular because they know you're
maybe,
not going to
maybe,
vote them, you and everyone else.
but even from the start, they were making decisions which would seem unpopular, such as the winter fuel allowance and
Yes.
the farmers' inheritance tax,
Mm.
which, in a way, although we might not agree with more government being a good thing, the attitude that they had in terms of not caring what the populace thought, and not just being a populist movement, which is a big problem for a lot of countries around the world. I
Mm.
respect that. I think that to be able to just think for yourself as a government, rather than just thinking about doing the most popular thing. But that's a rare thing, which will probably not be very common going forwards.
Mm. It'd be interesting to see how their policies turn out to be. As you said, that is it's definitely a change of pace and a change of the status quo from what we had in this country
Mm.
for a long time. So one way or another, it's something different, and it'll be interesting to see how their policies shape the country until the next general election.
Yeah, and also how long term policies, like a lot of governments don't really bother about or care about long term policies, because they assume that even if their party's in power, they won't be in power in sort of 10 years. But I'm sure it would be interesting to see if researchers could effectively work out what government has been most successful, not just in the time that it was in power, but in terms of the results that its policies produced in the next sort of 10, 15 years. Obviously difficult to do,
Mm.
because, say, for instance, the economy is a mix of many different factors, but it would
And
be
especially with the
interesting.
way the world changes as well, with the
Yeah,
way the speed of change these days, it would be very hard to say what's been successful today might not be successful, in 2 years.
yeah. Obviously, it's hard in many ways, but you could say, maybe take an example of like a government investing in like putting loads of solar panels on lots of people's roofs, or doing a grant which allows maybe thousands of more people to put solar panels on, and then in 5 years, maybe when their government leaves power, that's not has a huge effect, but over the next 50 years, it has a big effect.
Oh, don't get me started on that with like solar panels and stuff like that and renewable energies.
Oh, really?
Like, I have very strong feelings on it because all of our energy could literally be coming from two nuclear power plants that would save us. That would solve all of our energy problems for decades to come,
Mm.
and we'd have no carbon emissions, no nothing, and We would
Yeah,
not be
well,
burning fossil
I'm
fuels.
open to the idea of nuclear power. Not that I'm an expert in all this stuff, but
I'm not saying I'm an expert, but from what I've read and from my knowledge, it would be such a good source of energy
yeah, well, I do think
without.
it is another example of people's emotion and past experience, like past fears of these nuclear. It's got the word nuclear in, and also we've had
Yeah.
Fukushima and all that.
And, and still there was this show not long ago, Chernobyl, where it
Oh
showed
yeah,
us
yeah, that's one. Yeah.
very well what happens when things go wrong. But things have come a long way from that time as well. It's not like
Hmm.
there aren't regulations, safety measures, and everything else. But people, obviously, not everyone would be happy having a nuclear reactor in their back garden, which is understandable. But still, like,
But also, like Elon Musk makes the case, and I haven't looked into it, but really you have to use the sun's power. Like nuclear power is, I guess, good, and I guess he'd be supportive of it. But he's looking at China,
mm,
who presumably is not so much against nuclear power, but they're putting loads of solar panels everywhere, or trying to harness the sun's energy. And if you think the sun is basically just energy which is being transmitted to us for free, then any planet who wants to become like an advanced star system, there's always type 1 civilization or type 2 civilization. I don't know what's what, but Elon Musk talks about
mm,
it a lot. And yeah, but a lot big part of that is like how much energy that you're able to make or harness. And yeah, to not use the sun to a massive degree is perhaps not wise to do. Like Elon Musk thinks, yeah, there's all this desert space in America at least,
mm,
which could just like you just there is a certain number of solar panels, which is not an impossible number, which could be put there, and they could power the US for well as long as they go until they run out, which is probably at least decades.
mm. Yeah. But as you said, you need a lot of space for solar panels. You need the sun to be constantly there. In this country, we don't have the sun constantly being on us as well, nor we have that amount of space like deserts. So I think there is a case to be made for other sources of power that would be more efficient potentially because we don't have as much sun in this country and would produce a lot of yield for a lot of people for many years to come. And again, it's prevented because of attitudes and preconceived notions that people have against nuclear energy. And okay, fair enough. I mean, you cannot say that nuclear energy is completely waste free because there is nuclear waste, but there is also nuclear fusion, which is been proven to actually work in theory. And
Mm.
there's been some recent studies that have showed that very small reactions have been made where they actually released more energy than what was put into the nuclear fusion reaction. And once we master that, a nuclear fusion can give us as much energy, or if more, than um, nuclear fission, which is like breaking of the atoms,
Yeah, the
um,
current system. Yeah,
with the current system, without effectively, any byproducts and any waste that are nuclear and we need to that are radioactive and we need to kind of get rid of somehow. So more research into that is all we need.
is it more research because it can be done? Is it just a case of maybe it's too expensive, or you need
It's
to
very expensive. Yeah,
focus?
it's very expensive. We're talking like trillions of. We're gonna need like
Mm,
trillions to get nuclear fusion like big enough to kind of power us in the same degree as the current nuclear reactors can power us.
yeah, and I guess another argument in terms of for solar panels is potentially that you own your energy in terms of
Mm,
not if it's just loads of solar panels in a field, maybe not, or where you could have an allotment system like people do with they buy a little space for their gardening. But if you have roll out, if you give grants to people to do solar panels, um, and you can put it on your roof, then you have that direct source of energy. So it's, in a way, it's a democratized form of energy, which means energy companies are less in control. And I think that might be a good thing.
Yeah,
I
it
think all
is.
this stuff which gives people that a little bit more independence in an uncertain world, which might take it away from them. If it was, for instance, if all the energy is coming from a centralized place, I think, yeah, if it's possible to do it via a more democratized system, I think that's better.
Hmm. I agree. It would be nice. I completely agree.
I think the
But
only
in
problem with solar panels is the look of them on roofs. But
I don't think a lot of people have the problem with the look more. It's the fact that even if you covered your roof with solar panels, in most cases it would not be enough to sustain a household autonomously from the network.
I know some people in the UK who actually have too much energy from the solar panels, and therefore they end up making money by sending the energy back
Yeah,
to the centralized system.
that doesn't mean that they're not that they could be autonomous. That's a misconception. They're not autonomous. They couldn't be autonomous from the network.
How do you
I
mean?
can
Like,
tell you as much
they
for
couldn't
sure.
make, but aren't they already getting enough energy to power themselves?
No, because their solar panels aren't usually wired to fully power their whole home. It's usually
So why are they sending some of the solar power back to the centralized system? Surely they would use that all up before.
um I want to explain it properly, but I would not be able to do it justice. But as far as I know, homes are wired in such a way that your solar panels power you to some degree, but you're also powered from the network. And any excess energy that the solar panels produce, because they produce during the day constantly, unless you have the batteries to store them, it goes back to the network. So most
Mm.
people, if they had their own batteries that would store all that energy and use it in their own home, they wouldn't have enough energy to sustain every single appliance and bulb and like necessary in the house for the house to be completely autonomous,
Right.
especially during times like winter where the day is short, where the weather might be good, where you have overcast weather for like a week at a time. You know, so there is a lot of things that aren't as simple as people think they are in terms
Yeah.
of solar panels. I'll say that,
Right.
uh, and
Okay.
and and I know it because I have, and I know it because my family they have solar panels in
Mm.
Greece, and they've tried to be completely autonomous, and even in Greece, you couldn't be completely autonomous
Interesting.
because
Okay.
you wouldn't have enough power during the nighttime where you just depend on the batteries and how charged the batteries are from during the daytime
Right.
effectively.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Interesting.
where I'm not completely talking out of my ass,
No, I wouldn't say you are.
just that. Um, but maybe they will become more efficient in the future, and it will be more energy that is get stored, and people will be, have enough energy to power their own homes fully and completely autonomously. You never know. Just saying.
Yeah, because they say that if you, like a lot of people say, oh, it's not worth going outside if it's all cloudy because you won't get your vitamin D, or you won't get the benefits from sun exposure. But I've heard, well, not that I'm an expert, but actually going outside when it's cloudy is better than not going outside because you still get some sort of sun coming through the clouds, even if you can't see it.
Of course, yes, that is true. You do also get that. You just would just get very reduced efficiency on your solar panels in that sense.
Mm.
Um, yeah, but you never know. Things might change. New technologies come out every day. More efficiencies. Everything improves.
Yeah,
So
it's an
yeah,
exciting time. I'm sure there'll be lots of
exciting times
changes,
ahead.
and it's sort of it's fool's errand to really talk about it because
Yeah.
it's moving so quickly. But yeah, and one
Yeah.
big innovation that no one else had predicted can change every single other prediction because it just changes the game. Like I guess the app store on the iPhone or
Mm.
on smartphones, it just creates a whole new world in terms of possibilities that people never expected before they realized, yeah, what the iPhone could do.
Mm. We're only one innovation away from our whole lives changing.